Hello, hello, Shannon Fabric family. I am so excited to be here with you today for the Sew Together Tuesday Live. Today, we're going to be stitching a bag all on our embroidery machine using Shannon Cuddle. So I'm excited to get into this with you today, teach you all about it, talk about it. Let me know what your questions are. I'd love to answer them. But while we're waiting for people to check in and get here, if you wouldn't mind putting in the comments where you're checking in from today, say a nice hello, how's the weather? Yes, I saw someone saying prayers for Jamaica. Absolutely praying for all of the people that are in the line of Melissa, hoping everybody stays safe and well. And I see some people checking in here from, let me see, we've got Florida. Hello from Louisiana. Hello, everyone checking in. I am currently in Southeast Virginia, and we are embarking on 3 days of rain and wind, and so not excited about that. But I'm so excited to be here inside with you today, talking all about fun things like machine embroidery and Cuddle, a marriage made in heaven. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Dawn Chace. I am the designer and owner of Creative Appliques. I create embroidery, machine embroidery files, and I sell them on my website. I have been in business for over 13 years now, and I love all things machine embroidery. I am also a Shannon Fabric Cuddle Ambassador. And as I mentioned earlier, using Shannon Cuddle in machine embroidery is a match made in heaven. So let me know in the comments if you have ever used Shannon Cuddle with machine embroidery. If you have, what projects have you used it with? Have you used it to make bags before? Have you used it for stuffies, stuffed animal kind of things? Have you used it to just embroider a name or something on a blanket for a family member or a relative or a friend? Or what else have you used the Cuddle for with machine embroidery? So as we see people checking in, we have people from Central Virginia, Northern Texas. We have people from, is that Deutschland? Wow, we are international today. How exciting. South Dakota. Well, welcome, 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 everybody. I'm so excited that you're here. Now, before we get started, I wanted to let you know that by joining the live today, we have 3 winners that are going to win, and we'll announce them at the end of the show. One way to win is by resharing the post that was on Facebook earlier this week. There are 2 other ways you can also win today, is by sharing the Facebook Live on your public Facebook feed, and also sharing the YouTube link. So we would be ever so grateful if you shared it. That way it would help get this information out to all of your machine embroidery and Cuddle and sewing buddies. That would be awesome. But it also allows you to win. And what you're going to win today is super exciting. You're going to win 2 yards of Cuddle. One is going to be a luxe Cuddle, and the other one is going to be quilting Cuddle. And you're also going to receive the machine embroidery design file of the Skylar Sling Bag that we're stitching today. So you're going to actually be able to make this bag if you're a winner. You can also make this bag if you're not a winner, but for those people who win, they will have the opportunity to have both the design file and some Cuddle, and we'll give you the information at the end if you're a winner on how to retrieve those prizes. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show, and also share away with everyone. Today, if you have any questions, I would love to be able to answer your questions and get all of your inquiries answered. And one of the things that really, really helps is if you could put some question marks in front of your question before you ask it. There are other Cuddle ambassadors in the chat there, both on YouTube and Facebook. And so I'm very grateful to them and for all their assistance with being able to answer questions. I will also be answering questions if you have something specific for me or something that needs to be answered. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. However, if you don't get your question answered towards the beginning, as I start sewing, it may be a little challenging for me to get to answering those questions because I'm going to be focused on the machine and teaching you all about the steps to making the bag. So if your question doesn't get answered and you have to ask it again, no worries. We want to make sure you get all your information covered. Okay, so we got that all out of the way, and now let's jump in to talking about the bag. So let's switch over to the mat here. So this is the bag that we will be making today. This is called the Skylar Sling Bag, and this sample here is all stitched in Cuddle. So when I first created the bag I used with regular cotton quilting fabric. That way it was easy to be able to get it stitched out and you know exactly how I wanted it to be. So you can see here there's a strap on it that matches the bag. It has a flap with a magnetic closure. It has a zipper part, and there is a pocket in the front that has 3 sections. One that's nice and large enough for your phone, keys, also lipsticks, pens, and then you have a larger part of the bag inside here where you can even put perhaps a Kindle or a mini iPad or a book or other things, snacks, and other things that you may need as well. So this is what we're stitching today, and it's done in 2 hoopings, one for the flap and then one for the main body of the bag. So I was really happy with this when I first put it all together and came out with this design over a year ago. And then Shannon keeps up-leveling things for us, and I absolutely love it. And what they did earlier this year, they came out with what is called Quilting Cuddle. Now, what is Quilting Cuddle? Well, Quilting Cuddle is essentially a fabric that can be used the same way all you quilters use regular cotton quilting fabric. Quilting Cuddle has less stretch. Regular Cuddle, C3, other types of Cuddle have a lot more stretch than Quilting Cuddle. So this is the black willow that I used on the outside of the bag, and you can see there's a lot of stretch here with this Luxe Cuddle. With the Quilting Cuddle, there's a lot less stretch. There's a little bit, but not as much as there is with some of the other Cuddle types. So that's one thing that's awesome about the Quilting Cuddle is that it doesn't stretch as much. The other difference with Quilting Cuddle is that the nap or the pile, the loft is a lot smaller. So I think it's about 1 millimeter. Whereas with the regular C3 or Cuddle 3 of Cuddle from Shannon is 3 millimeters. That's why it's called C3. The 3 means 3 millimeters. So this Quilting Cuddle is 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeters. So it's much less depth. That way it makes it so much easier to do projects like machine embroidery projects and also making quilt projects as well. So they really up-leveled it and changed the game in both the Cuddle industry and the quilting industry earlier this month. And this is patent pending. So it's super, super exciting. And I'm so glad to be here to show it to you today. So I also wanted to mention, I would like to share where you can purchase this design before we get into all the specifics of it. So if we could share the screen to the link for on my website. So as I mentioned, Creative Appliques is my business, and that's where you can purchase this design file on my website. That's a Skylar Sling Bag. So if you look here in this next picture, you can see this is cotton, sorry, not cotton. This is Quilting Cuddle. I used the Wanderlust line of the Quilting Cuddle, and you can see how it really, really is fun. It changes it up. The bag looks so much different than it did in just the regular cotton. And I made it even more fun by changing the front pocket, which is the bottom here, and the flap itself. So the flap is done in like a purple, and then the bottom here is done in these large florals, and it really changes it up. It makes it so much more fun by just doing that. Okay, so back to the table. So one of the things that we're going to do is by using the Luxe Cuddle here, this is Luxe Cuddle Willow in black. We use this for the exterior of the bag. So the front of the flap, the pocket itself is also made in the Willow Luxe Cuddle. And then the back of the bag is made in the Luxe Cuddle. The front of the inside of the flap here and the front parts of the bag, so the parts below the zipper and above the zipper, those are both in the Quilting Cuddle. This color is called Black Cherry. This is a very trending color for this holiday season. So what we wanted to do with this bag and with all the cuddle is to really up level it. We wanted it to make it more elegant, more classy, and really take it to the next level so that you can take this bag with you when you go to the theater as a clutch, when you go to any of your upcoming holiday parties or events. You can take something like this and it really up levels the design itself. Now, one of the things is if you wanted to just use it as a regular clutch without a strap, you just would simply skip this step of putting these on. Today, we're going to put these on so that you can see how it's done and what step it is added in, but you can simply omit this. A note about the strap, we're not going to assemble the strap today. This is very simple to do though. It is included, the directions on how to stitch it is included in the 18-page downloadable PDF file that comes with this design file for the Skylar Sling Bag. So you will know how to be able to stitch this strap. I didn't want to take the time today to have to switch my machine back and forth. And, you know, let's face it, it's a little boring watching somebody stitch 60 inches both sides of a strap and put it all together. It's your basic strap, but I used the Black Cherry Quilting Cuddle for this. So isn't that fun to be able to use the Quilting Cuddle for a strap, right? That's so cool. The other thing you can also do if you're not wanting to sew a strap like this, and another way to up level the bag as well is you can get like a chain. Now, this may not be the most elegant type of strap, but it does change up the look of the bag by simply adding a small chain strap like this to the bag. And then it would also be kind of like a little hand forearm clutch as well when you go out for an evening. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that's what we're going to be stitching up. So now let's talk a little bit about using Cuddle in this bag. Now, one of the things that you really need to be aware of when you're using Cuddle and cutting out the shapes for the bag is the direction of the loft or the nap. Which way is it going? You want to make sure that you have it when you're cutting it, that you have the cuddle in the correct direction to where the pieces are. So in the instructions, when you look at the instructions, they talk all about, you know, the sides here, what shape and numbers and everything. Well, the widest part is the largest number is going to be the width, and that is going to be where you know that that is the widest part of the bag. So if we're talking about the flap here, the 12 inches for the size would be this way, and the 5 inches would be this way. To have that make sense, so then you would want to make sure that you have the nap going in the correct direction for when you're cutting that fabric, okay? So to show you a piece of one of the pieces that we have here, these are all laid out and cut already. I didn't want to take your time to cut all of these in person because we would be here for 4 hours. So no, not that long, just kidding. But it does take a little bit of time and focus to make sure you get them cut all the right size that you need and for what spot they're to be put in. So this is piece B. in the design, which will be put down second. And that's essentially the flap here. So when I'm cutting this fabric, I want to make sure that I have it in the correct direction. So one of the things that I do is I pet my fabric a lot. Raise your hand if you also pet your fabric a lot. I pet my fabric a lot, and especially when it's Cuddle, very soothing. So I know I have my direction going in the right way, and you can then mark it. So I marked all my pieces. This one is a little hard to see under this lighting, but I marked all my pieces in the top corner with the little arrow that goes up, meaning that's the top, that's the upper direction. And then I put the letter on there as well. I also have these little spools here on a little ball chain and my clips, and I have them all marked that way. This is a design file on my website. You stitch them all up, cut them all out, and then you have your little markers to be able to know what piece you're using, because this bag itself has pieces that go from A through letter P, P for Paul. So that is a lot of pieces, and you want to make sure you have them all. And so I cut them and I label them immediately, and then I don't have to think about it, because then when I go back to the written instructions, all I do is I look for my little spool here and see what letter I have, and I place it down. So how to know which direction the pile goes is really kind of easy. So if you have the selvage, so this here, the black cherry here, you can see that's the selvage. If you have the selvage, the nap is going to go parallel to the selvage. The selvage part doesn't have as much stretch. It doesn't have as much give. So if you're trying to figure out a piece like this that I don't have the selvage on, I simply do the pull test. Here, this side is most likely is the selvage side, because I am not getting any stretch in that. So because this is the selvage side, the nap is either going to go this way towards me, or it's going to go this way away from me. Now, one of the things that I can feel it is that the nap is going towards me. And you can see in these areas here. Now, I want to mention not all Luxe Cuddle is defined and easy to tell which way the nap is going. But if you use at least the test of, is it stretching or is it not? If it's not stretching, then your nap will be going in a parallel with the non-stretchy side. So I hope that made sense. I hope that gave you a little idea of knowing. So now with this one, because we do have the selvage here, we know the selvage is here. Well, this one definitely does have a nap we can look at, and we can definitely define and see. So when we stretch it this way, nope, no stretch there. We got some stretch there. So it's not, the nap's not going to be running this way. The nap is going to be running this way, parallel to the selvage. Now, is it that way? Or is it this way? Can you see the difference in that? So why this matters is when you're going ahead and you're going to be cutting all your pieces, you want to make sure that you have the nap going the direction that you want it to. Most likely, you're going to want the nap to all be going down this way so that it looks uniform. It's not a deal breaker. It's not the end of the world if you don't have the nap going in the correct direction. But that's just one of the things that if you wanted to know which way the direction of the nap should be going, that's one of the ways that you can tell. All right. So welcome to everybody that is just checking in. This is being recorded and will be on the Shannon Fabrics YouTube channel, and you can rewatch from the very beginning if you've missed anything. So we have talked about the Cuddle. The other thing that we are going to be using as well as the Luxe Cuddle Willow in black and the Quilting Cuddle in black cherry. We're also going to be using, and I don't know if you all know this, Shannon does sell silky satin. So we are going to be using this for the lining of the bag. That way it takes out some of the bulk, and it's super soft and nice to have that on the inside of the bag. So those are the 3 types of fabrics we will be using today for this bag. All right, so now let us talk about the supplies we are going to need. So for starters, we are talking about the stabilizer. In the machine embroidery, you always need a stabilizer in the bag or in the hoop. And so you can use one of 2 things. You can use a medium weight cutaway, or you can use a mesh cutaway. Doesn't need to be fusible, preferably not fusible. You're not going to be ironing much with the Cuddle. I prefer to use the medium weight because it gives it a little bit more structure. It gives it a little bit more form. And because Cuddle does stretch, it prevents and does help with preventing stretching of the Cuddle. A lot of people like to use the mesh for a lighter weight bag, and that's totally fine. As a note, this bag only comes in one size, 8 inches high by 12 inches is the hoop size that it fits in. So it's a little bit shy of an 8 by 12 inch bag, just so you know that it only comes in that size. Okay, so stabilizers, cutaway. Tearaway is not going to be great in this bag because it will over time wear out, break apart, and fall apart, and then it could cause little bunches inside the bag, and sometimes it's crunchy and it makes sounds and stuff. So I don't advise using tearaway because there are parts that you're not going to be able to get the tearaway out of the bag. You can get it around the exterior, but not the interior of the bag. The other thing is, if you're doing machine embroidery, especially if you're embroidering a name, an embroidery design, if you're putting something here on the flap, you will want to have some light water-soluble topper to put on top of the Cuddle to make sure that the stitches don't sink into the Cuddle. You also probably are going to want to, if you're using something that has a lot of loft, a lot of nap, you are probably going to want to do a test stitch on the fabric that is not going to be part of the design, part of the purse in the when you put it all together for the first time, to make sure that you your embroidery will stand out and it's not sinking into the actual Cuddle. So that's another thing. You can use the water soluble. I only use the water soluble stabilizer when I'm doing the embroidery on top, like a satin stitch, like a name, a monogram, that type of thing, or an embroidery design to make sure it stitches on top. The other option you can do as well, you can also use what's called a nap blocker, or it's a stitching that you put behind the design that's loose, and you would stitch it in the same color thread as the item you're stitching on so that it blends in and you don't see it as much. And then you are able to see the embroidery design on top. All right, so those are stabilizers. You're also going to need something for structure in the bag. So a lot of bags, zippered bags, any kind of bags in the hoop, a lot of times they'll use batting. Well, batting is great. It adds that little extra structure. It gives it a little bit of poof to the bag, but it doesn't add a lot of stability. So when you get into larger size bags, it's better to be using something like a bag making foam. This is... you can find many sources from it. Designs and Machine Embroidery has it. That's the one I'm using today. It's thin, but it has a lot of structure to it. If you can see, there's structure to that, as opposed to with the batting, it's much more floppy. So if that's what you want, no worries, no problem. Use the batting. If you want a little more structure, get some bag making foam, because it really helps to give the bag stability. Now, we also are going to need several other things when we are doing our bag. So you're going to want some good pins. These are clover head pins, which are great. They are good for when you're working with Cuddle. It has a nice flat head, which is not going to get caught in the under the embroidery foot, but it's also not going to sink into the Cuddle. So you're going to be able to find it when you need to take it out. So some good pins with a nice flat head are preferable. Anything with a round head or even some of the other types of pins, they are hard to find. They get lost in the Cuddle, and also there's a potential of it getting stuck on your embroidery foot. I like to have 2 different types of stilettos to be able to use for holding down parts of the fabric while it stitches, and to making sure that it does not get stuck underneath your embroidery foot. This is a point and turner that will really help at the end when we go ahead and turn the bag right side out. Scissors, different types of scissors. This little pair is great here for helping to cut out the zipper from behind. And then applique scissors. These are double curve applique scissors you can find at Fomore. Absolutely love, with helping to trim the bag foam. And then at the very, very end, you're going to need a great pair of scissors to get all of that cut away. We'll have 2 layers of luxe Cuddle, and some areas will have 4, and then we'll have the satin, and then we'll have the pocket. And so there's a lot of levels and of depth that we're going to have to get through. So a nice, good pair of dressmaking scissors. A Sharpie. This one I used to mark my pieces, so I knew what direction the loft went, the nap, and also what letter it was. A rotary cutter for cutting your pieces. And a rotary cutter works great when you're cutting the fabric. If you do it face down or the nap down onto the table, it helps have less Cuddle dust, is what we call it, which is all that Cuddle, the pieces of the Cuddle that end up shaking off. But an even better one to use is this Olfa knife. Now, I have used this, but I keep it in here on purpose. This is like your fabric scissors. You don't want anybody else using this, opening their packages, doing anything else with this other than using this for your Cuddle. So it has a nice sharp angle like that, and it's very sharp. And when you use it, you just use it to cut just the back part of the Cuddle, and that helps you really well not to cut into a lot of the extra fibers, and it helps minimize the Cuddle dust that you will end up having to vacuum up. There are tons of videos on the Shannon Fabric YouTube channel that go over cutting fabric, so I didn't want to take up the time today, but a lot of them will use this, and they will also potentially use a rotary cutter. So we have all of these supplies that we use. We also are going to need some kind of tape. I love to use medical tape, transport tape. It holds it very, very nicely. It has zero residue that's left on the fabric and the stabilizer. It tears very easily, and when you stitch over it, you can get it out of the seams really, really easily. Some of the other types of tapes, masking tape, depending on the type of clear Scotch tape, those things sometimes they tear apart in pieces, and you have to really hunt to get the pieces off. Some steam-a-seam too, if you want to close up the opening in the bottom of the bag, or you can hand stitch it. That's your preference. I don't hand stitch because hand is a 4-letter word, so I like using this. Some SF101, which is some interfacing. This is fusible. It has the bumpy side on the back that is fusible, and it will be used in specific sections in the bag. Not every piece needs it because we'll have the stabilizer still in the bag, but this would be used for when we put the snap on, and also on the inside of the pocket for stability and structure to help hold the snap. We are also going to be using, my little pin is in here to show you, I'm using a 9014 needle. Usually when I am doing any kind of machine embroidery, I will use a 7511 needle. But because we have so many layers to this bag along with the foam, I like to use the 9014. So if you choose to add a design to the front of the flap, you can use a 7511. You can use a 7511 all the way through the whole flap assembly. But when you get to the other part of the bag, this part of the bag, I would encourage you to go up to either an 80 or a 90. And then let me make sure I have all the things covered there. Yep, threads, pins, stilettos. All right, so that is all the supplies that we're going to need for the project. And now switch out to this. These are all the pieces that I have pre-cut already so that we are ready and have everything we need to just throw it on the machine and get going. So in the instructions, it does tell you after you cut all the fabrics, it does tell you then to prep the fabrics. So there are a few pieces that need to be prepped ahead of time. Let me go through here and find the one I already prepped. So I prepped these. These are the tabs. These are for putting the hardware on. These parts right here, those are for putting the hardware on, okay? And I prepped these. It tells you how big to cut them, and then you fold it and fold it again. You can use either the Steam-A-Seam 2 to iron them closed, but I like to have the stitching on here. So I actually go ahead, I cut one piece, I fold it in fours, and I stitch it on both sides. I cut it in half, and then I feed it through the hardware, and then I stitch it here just to keep it in its shape. And so then it's easier when I go ahead and put it onto the purse in the step I need to put it in. Okay, so that's prepped ahead of time. The other thing that gets prepped ahead of time is, of course, the strap. You can do that ahead of time, or you can do that after. That's one of the last ones. But this is the front pocket of the bag. And so with this, we need to take one of the pieces of SF101 and iron it on the one flap. Now I like to iron it and make sure it's on the part that's going to be the front of my pocket. The front of my pocket right here. I want to make sure that the SF101 ends up being on the part that's going to be the front of my pocket, because I then put this snap in here. And when I put the snap on there, I want to make sure I have something of structure behind it. So I also put a piece of SF101 on the back of it as well and iron it down. So that's all in the instructions as well. But I prep those ahead so that we can get to stitching, right? Because all that stuff is boring and not fun to watch. So after the supplies, then we've prepped the few pieces we can prep, and now we can get to stitching. So I am going to go to switch over to the machine now. And what I have done is I have already, actually I'll come back to the mat here. I have already stitched this first placement line, okay? This is the first step that stitches. The important part to look at is this circle here with this little like football goalpost thing. That'll come into play after we're done stitching the whole thing. The whole flap assembly is finished, to be able to then attach the magnet to the inside of the flap. So I stitched this first so we didn't have to worry about taking time now to do that. So head to the machine and put the hoop on the machine. All right, so we've done step one. We've already stitched that. Okay, and now we're going to take piece A. Can't really see that. Piece A. There we go. Piece A, and this is foam. And I'm going to put this down, covering or lined up with some of the stitching. It's going to stitch narrower than the actual stitching that's on here. So just to be aware of that, it will stitch a little bit narrower, and that is on purpose because we do not want to have all this bulk left in the seam. So you can, if you want to, tape it down. I like to go a little rogue and just use my stilettos here and definitely keep my fingers out of the way. And my camera froze up, I see. Let me see something. Right now, it's just stitching down the flat. Once it's finished stitching, I will play with plug that a second, see if I can get it back up and running. There we go. Okay. Hopefully it'll keep going. I will try to watch and make sure I can see what is happening if it's stopping at times. I apologize. Okay, so we've stitched the entire foam down. So the next step, I'm going to remove it from the machine. You don't have to, but this is just easier for me to show you guys over here on the mat. This step is optional, but I do it because I want to remove all the excess bulk that I can possibly remove from the inside of the seams. It's going to give you a crisper, cleaner bag. It's going to give you less bulk, and I just think it just makes it nicer. So I always, when I digitize a design, I will always remove the foam if I can. All right, so there's that. Then we take, we'll take piece B and lay it down on top. Now I marked all of mine, and it's hard to see on the camera, but we've talked about how to know where the nap is and what's going on with that, right? So here is the bottom curve of the bag. That's the bottom flap. I'm going to just scooch it. And this is, very technical terms here in machine embroidery, scooching. So I want to make sure I have it extending past these two straight lines, and I'm going to scooch it down to come just past this here, about 1/4 inch. The reason being, we need this excess here at the top left, because that's how it gets assembled in the next hooping to the main part of the bag. So I want to make sure I have it down here, so it's covered here, but I have a lot of the extra left on this side of the stitching, so that to make sure it's going to stay when I do the next step. All right, so now back to the machine. It's my camera. All right, so again, you can tape it. Some of these steps I don't tape. I will just lay the fabric down, and I will then let the machine go, and I will be using my stiletto or my presser here to help hold it, keeping my fingers well out of the way of the needle. One important thing to do too, if you can, with your machine, it is important, if you can, to raise the presser foot of your machine. That way it will help with all of these levels of layers and layers and layers that we have. So now what's going to stitch is going to be the quilting. There's some vertical lines that are going to be stitching on the bag. So if you're using something like a something like a quilting cuddle, then you will see these lines. So maybe at this point, Adriana, we can put up the photo of the Wanderlust bag. So if you can see there are some vertical lines on that flap. They show up well with the quilting cuddle and even with C3, Cuddle 3. Okay, and so on those bags with a less loft or nap, you will be able to see the lines in the stitching. With this Cuddle, you don't see it so much. However, I like to still stitch them because it attaches the two pieces together. So I really like still stitching those vertical lines because it helps to hold the flap together. Okay, so so one other thing about this photo. Now is the time if you wanted to do an embroidery design, a monogram, an applique, like I did there with the letters, the 2-letter monogram applique there in embroidery. Now is the time to stitch that, because of the fact that the next thing that happens after this in the design is we put the inside of the flap on. Okay, so back to the machine, please. All right, so we've stitched all the lines and we've stitched down piece B. So now one thing I want to go and talk about on the mat here is where the placement of this piece C. This is going to be the inner side of the bag. Now, I do have to say this is probably going to be a preference for how you want it. But right now, we have the design on the machine like this. So this is our hoop, and this is the flap. This is the curved part of the flap we stitched, okay? So this is the curved part of the bag right here. Now, when you open your bag, do you want your nap to go up or do you want your nap to go down? So that is what's going to matter, because when you open the flap, it's going to go like this, like, right? Opening a door, opening a book, whatever, it's going to come up. So do you want to have your nap going up or do you want to have your nap coming down? That's going to matter which way you place this piece on. If you want to have the nap going up towards the curve of the bag, then what you would do is have it, the nap is coming towards me, or as you know, towards my body. If I want to have it in the same direction, the nap, 2 naps in the same direction, I would flip it over like that, okay? From left to right, flip it over. If I want to have the nap so that when I open the bag, the nap is coming down towards the rest of the bag, I would take it, because the nap is now coming towards me, I would take it and go like this, all right? So that way you have a choice on how you want the nap to be. Now again, with this one, this is the same thing. We don't want to put, go all the way down like this. We want to make sure we have this line of stitching right here. You can see that we have the line of stitching right here. All right. And so we want to make sure we're not just taking this piece of black cherry and just putting it a little bit over the line. We want to make sure we have it even further up past that line, because these 2 pieces are what's going to be attached and how this flap is going to attach to the bag. So we make sure we have the stitching here and we put this part down like that, and we will attach them together. Yes, I agree, Jackie. The quilting really gives it a more professional look, and it also, as I mentioned, attaches those the pieces together. The Luxe Cuddle, the willow, it attaches it to the foam, so that really helps it as well to be able to stay in one piece and helps with the structure. So, oops, switch you guys to the machine here. Okay, sorry about that. And if you can see how the presser foot is, just gliding over. So if you have the ability to raise your presser foot please do that because it will help. If you do not have the ability to raise your presser foot, one of the things that you can do that can help assist with helping not have bulk get in the way of your presser foot is to be able to use a water-soluble stabilizer on the top, and that can help the machine and the presser foot glide over the fabrics. All right, so that part is finished stitching. We have finished the flap. Comes together really quickly and easily. 4 minutes. That's all the stitch time it is. All right, so here we are back at the table. We are going to remove it from the hoop now. And we are going to prep this because then once we get to stitching the rest of the bag body, it is ready to go. So the next thing that we need to do is on the front side here, or the back side, the back of the stabilizer, we are going to take where's my piece of 1 second for my it's magnet. All right, so we need for this part, we're going to be on the back of the stabilizer here, and we're going to need our pins, and we are going to need our pressing mat, which I didn't mention, and our little iron. So we are going to take from the back of the bag, we are going to take our pins and we are going to stick them in the 4 corners of the football goalpost. And we're going all the way through to the other side. Okay. Also going to need your marking pen for this. And I'm going to lift it straight up. So if you can see, I put in the goalpost there the 4 corners. In the center of the circle, there's those 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I put the pins all the way through to the other side, just like that. Now I'm taking these 4 pins and I'm going to take this washer from the magnet, and I'm going to put these 2 into this vertical, this side, the left side, and I'm going to take these 2 and put it into the right side. All right, it's just to get it positioned. Then I'm going to press it down. And now I'm going to take my marking pen and I'm going to mark inside the circle, and I'm going to mark in the 2 sides there. And this is the back, so it doesn't need to look all pretty. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. It's just for placement. So if you can see that now, I'm going to take out the pins. And this is the center circle, and these 2 are the sides. Okay. Now I'm going to take my piece of one of the pieces of SF 101, and I'm going to iron it on here. Actually, I was supposed to do this first. So it's good for you guys to see me make mistakes, right? All right, so there's the SF 101. Again, we'll do this again. It's fast to do this. So the reason why I'm doing it again is because I have to know where I'm going to place the magnet, and it has to be in the right spot, or it's not going to attach to the pocket in the next step. the right way. So again, the left 2 pins in the left side and the right 2 pins in the right side. There we go. This would have been easier for you to see. So in the center and the 2 sides, there we go, just like that. All right, remove the pins. Now I'm going to reach to the inside of the flap here, inside, and I'm going to take my super small, super pointy little scissors here, and I'm going to fold this line, and I'm going to just take a small snip, ever so tiny, super, super tiny, small snip. Because if you need to cut more, you can always cut more, but you can't cut less. What these snips are for is for the prongs of the magnet to go into. So now, reaching from the inside of the bag, I'm going to figure out where these slits are. You might need to put your stiletto or the piece of your, the ends of your scissors in there to help you. And again, we're doing the shimmy, highly technical machine embroidery term. Do the shimmy. There we go. And now, let's see, where's my washer? Things are disappearing. All right. Does anybody see the washer? How could it have gone away so fast? Is it on the front? There, it's on the inside. Wanted to go inside. All right, again, so inside, put it in those 2 spots. Sometimes it's easier to feel it with your fingers from the outside, or this will be the inside. Okay. Of course, it's going to be a challenge because we're live. I already have it in there. You all saw me. Okay, now we get the washer and put it on. Now it's your preference if you want to take the prongs and fold them out, or if you want to fold them towards each other. Really doesn't matter. You just close them as best you can. Just like so. Get them nice and flattened out as best you can. And it's chunky metal, so it's going to be a lot to try to like get that super, super flat, right? So now I take another piece of my SF-101 and I just make sure it's big enough to cover this part that's there, and I'm going to iron that down. And I really focus not so much on the back metal part as I do around the perimeter of the circle. Reason being is that I want to make sure that's all attached really well, and then I'll just give a nice press onto the metal itself. This is to add structure and stability so that when these magnets are constantly being pulled off, pulled apart, you have extra support in there inside of the cuddle there. All right, so now we're going to trim up this, and I like to trim my stabilizer as close to the stitching as possible without cutting the stitching, again, to remove as much bulk as I can from the seam, because we're going to turn this all right side out, and I don't want to have bumps in my seams. So I like to remove as much stabilizer as I can. So now you would see if you used a tearaway here, you could just tear this away. However, you're still going to have stabilizer in here, right? And through time, it's going to disintegrate and fall apart. And especially if you wash your bags, it's going to not hold up well over the life of your bag. And let's face it, you put a lot of time, love, energy, money into making this, that you don't want it to just, fall apart after a few uses. So just getting rid of this extra stabilizer, less bulk in the end when we go ahead and assemble it. All right, so now I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch all the way around these two sides here and here. I am not cutting the straight edge up here. I am not touching this. I am not going to cut that at all, because that is where we use it to attach it to the rest of the bag. So leaving about 1/4 of an inch around the whole part. Not touching. And if you don't know where not to cut, you don't cut up here where these two are not stitched together. All right, you don't cut up there in that area. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is turn it right sides out. And I like to give it a good finger press. You can iron it if you want, but then beware that sometimes ironing does affect the cuddle, especially like the Luxe cuddle. And now one of the things you could do too is see how some of these fibers are caught in the seam. You use your little stiletto here to get those fibers out, and they pop right out of the seam. This is like one of the most gratifying parts of stitching with Cuddle, is getting all those fibers out of that. So I'm not going to take time to do that right now. But anyway, so there you go. That's the flap, and we already have the magnet on the inside of it. What's the brand and model of the cordless iron I am using? Catherine. It is a little Cricut. It's by Cricut, C-R-I-C-U-T. You can find it at a big box arts and crafts store. I'll leave it at that. Okay, now back to the machine. So next step we're going to do is, I have already hooped my second stabilizer, sewed the placement line, and stitched down my zipper. It's all in the directions, really super simple and easy to do that. Simply laid my zipper on there and stitched it down. Didn't want to take time. One thing I do want to know, can you see right here, these two little spots? There are two lines right there on purpose. Those lines are specifically for if you are fussy cutting your fabric and you need to know exactly where the center of the bag is to be able to place the center of your fabric. Those lines right there will show you where to place your fabric. The center marking on the hoop is not always the center marking of the design, because different brands, makes, and models have more area up here and less up down here. So this is not always going to be in the same spot that the actual design is. So that's one note. All right, so back to the machine, and I'll get the pieces that I need here. So we attached the zipper. Now we're going to take piece E and piece F. So we are going to take the hoop and turn it over like a book. We turned it to the side or over to the back, and we are going to take piece F. And today we're using lining, I mentioned that earlier, and we're going to bump it up to the bottom edge, to this farthest right edge of the zipper placement. Now this stuff is super slippery, super soft, and it moves a lot. So I'm going to take the time to tape this one down, specifically because when it's on the bottom of the hoop, it's going to be sliding around on the bed of the machine, and I don't want to have it moving on me because we've got a bunch of stuff that we're going with right now. So this is on the back of the hoop, and I place this right side down. So there are different sides of the satin that you can feel, and so I have it the right side down, right side onto the stabilizer. So now I'm going to flip it over, holding that piece, and I like to take a pin and pin it to the stabilizer, just to make sure when I get it back on the machine, it's not going anywhere, okay? So it is going to stay where I put it, all right? And now on the front of the hoop, we have piece E. Now, this is going to be the bottom part of the bag. This is this part right here. So we want to make sure we, again, check our nap. Which way is it going? Which way do you want it? I want it to be smoothed down this way. So I can feel it this way, and now I'm going to flip it. This is essentially stitch and flip method. So what that means is when I'm going to stitch it down and then I'm going to flip it. And that way, that's how I have the right sides, the correct sides of the seam. That's how I have the raw edges of the fabric inside the seam, behind, like underneath the zipper, if that makes sense. So now I'm taping this one down really well too, because they like to slide. I'm not too worried about this piece here because it's going to be on top of the machine. So we are ready now to put this back on the machine. We turn the hoop to the machine. And I actually have to change out the design because we're on our second design. So load that. The machine, this is the bag body. Skip ahead because I stitched the first two steps, the placement line and then the zipper. So now at the machine here, I'm putting the hoop on, but I have my hand underneath the hoop, making sure I see that lining is all smoothed out, okay? So now you can see here the machine moved, and now I'm here at the zipper. It's going to stitch through this tape, and I am happy about that. That does not bother me. I am happy to have that stitched through there because I want to make sure it's going to stay where I want it to stay. All right, so now this is going to stitch. And again, slow your machine down and raise your presser foot if you can. All right, so now that we have tacked down piece E, we are now going to I'm going to remove this tape because it is now going to be put under the next step, and I don't need it there anymore because it's already secured. So the next step that's going to stitch is piece G. I'm going to take piece G and I'm going to put it over all of the stitching. So we have stitching here, stitching here, stitching here, and then we have that line. So we want to make sure that this piece here that has this raw edge is going to be underneath piece G. So piece G, I'm just making sure that it is covering the stitching on all four sides. All right, and this is the lining. So again, you can take this down if you wish, the next thing to stitch now is going to be tacking down piece G. This is the foam that's going to give it that extra structure in the bag. This video will stay on Shannon Fabric's YouTube channel, so you can rewatch this and replay it as many times as you wish to learn more about Cuddle, to learn about this bag, to learn about Snap and Loft. And you also, can contact me through my website if you have questions as well. And if you joined us late and you have not shared it, share on Facebook and share the link for YouTube, because we will have 3 winners at the end. I do not have the pattern for the non-embroidery design for the sewing pattern. I only have the embroidery file for this. All right, so now we're going to go to the mat. And again, we're going to trim this up quickly because we're going to remove that bulk. So when you come around to the sides here, you want to be careful you're not going to cut this, because this is part of the bag that will still be seen. And so make sure that when you come around to the side like that, that you're not cutting it. And I like to, as you can see, hold up the one side. My blades of my scissors are even, flat. I'm not twisted. I'm not at an angle. Right now I am flat because I want to make sure I'm not cutting my black cherry and that I am only cutting the foam. And I give a little bit of tension on the foam. I'm not pulling too much though, because remember, we don't want to dislodge from the stabilizer within the hoop. So now that we've trimmed that all up, the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to take piece E and we're going to fold it. Let me get the hoop the right direction. We're going to fold just piece E, only piece E down. Okay, just like so. We're going to fold this down, and you want put a few pins to hold piece E to the stabilizer. Again, being careful we're not dislodging the stabilizer. All right, and we're outside the line of stitching. My pins are here, and this is the most exterior part of the stitching. So we just want to make sure that we're outside of that. So we have this pin down. We're going to take it now, and we are going to stitch down piece E. All right, so back to the machine and stitch down piece E. Now I did not do the lining, right? I did not take the lining and fold it. I just did the front part. Just be careful too that, when you have these clover head pins, the heads are a little bit bigger. So when you pin, even though I'm outside of the stitch line, those heads are large and can potentially get in the way. All right, so hoop. And the next thing we're going to do talk a little bit about something else in a second. So this original design has credit card slots in it, credit card pockets. Right there, you can see 6 spots for credit cards right there that are in that pocket and behind that flap. Today, we're not going to do that. I'm skipping all those steps. So we are going to go to the very next step, which is to apply the pocket. This, remember, we prepped it. We talked about it before with the SF101 and the snap. So here we have our black stitch line that we can see. That's the center. Why does that matter? We want to make sure that this part right here of the snap is in line to make sure that this is in the center of the bag. If you attach the pocket like that, and this part of the magnet is not in line with this line right here, there's going to be problems with the flap attaching to the right spot. So it's imperative that you make sure you have it folded, okay? This is, we have the fold up here by the zipper. The raw edges are off to the left side here, all right? So now we're going to have it about 1/4 of an inch maybe down, so you can still see the black cherry here. You can still see this, but I don't have it all the way up to the zipper like that. It makes it hard to try to get into the pockets when it's so far up against the zipper. So I drop it down about 1/4 to an eighth to 1/4 of an inch. And I will, again, use a few pins. Now you see here, this is where I'm talking about these clover head pins are really good because you want to make sure they're not getting lost in the lumps. All right. So now what this is going to do is this is going to stitch around the perimeter here, and then it's going to stitch this pocket down. So we need to pay attention where the presser foot is when we come up here, that it doesn't get caught under this. So this may be an area where you might want to put some water-soluble stabilizer on top. I'm just going to watch it and babysit it as I'm here stitching it with you, so it's not a problem. But that's one thing to be aware of, that you want to, this is not a project that you just stick it on there and walk away from. As you can see, because we've already been like, you know, going for a while, and you stitch something and then you immediately put something else on it. So here, again, you want to make sure that where that's starting to stitch, that it catches. Whoops. Yep. I wanted to make sure. I couldn't remember if I switched the camera. All right. So that we caught this part with the presser foot. I'm actually going to stop it, and I'm going to raise the presser foot even higher. All right. So there. I raised it as high as I can go, and you can see, it's still like kind of, can't really see the presser foot in there. I can, but you know, it does kind of get buried in there. It does kind of get a little bit lost because we've got so much going on in there now, right? We've got stabilizer, we have foam, we have some quilting cuddle, now we have 2 layers of luxe cuddle. So now what it's going to do is it's going to go back, and it's going to come up in the middle to make those channels for the pocket. So it's doing a triple bean stitch here. It's going up, and it's going to come down the other side. So now if this had the credit card slots in it, this is going to be closing up the raw edges of those credit card slots. So we want to make sure we've got our stilettos handy and ready, so that when this comes back, see, if it went over it, when it comes back, it's not going to get caught. And if you're worried, stop the machine. Raise up the foot, make sure that your pocket fold is under it, and then start up again and go. All right, so that's one way to make sure that, you know, if you're worried that your presser foot is going to get caught, and all different brands of machines have different type of presser feet, different shapes, different sizes. They can raise up higher, they don't raise. So you want to make sure that it's not catching that there. So this is the one pocket that we have now here. Now it's going to go over, and it's going to do the same thing over on the other side. Would it work if you use tissue paper on top and then tear it off? Deborah, that's a great idea. I have not done that. But yeah, you might want to try that. The other thing that might work too is if you're a quilter and you have like, English paper piecing, or maybe even some lightweight tearaway stabilizer can also potentially help as well. Absolutely, I don't see why not. I just think that sometimes with this triple bean stitch that we've got going on right now, it's a lot of stitches that's gonna kind of really hold that down. And you might have to use some tweezers and stuff to really get it out of there. But if that's what you got on hand and you want to try it, absolutely. The water-soluble topper is great. I would suggest not using saran wrap. I know that's a thing in the community sometimes to use saran wrap. I would not use that for this right now. All right. So now we've tacked down the pocket. The next thing we're going to do. So some of these steps, just so you know, some of these steps I don't have to take the hoop off the machine every time. I am doing it now because it's easier for you to see. Of course, when we're stitching on the back of doing stuff on the back of the hoop, you need to take it off the machine. But if you're doing stuff on the front of the machine, you don't always need to be removing the hoop. So now I'm going to remove my tape. That's what this stiletto helps a lot of times. Gets your extra pieces of tape, helps you get them off of there. And honestly, you don't have to remove it if you don't want to, but I just choose to remove them because I just don't want that all in the rest of my bag. So as best as I can. All right, now remember I put pins in over here. So now I want to make sure all my pins are out for that. And I'm going to remove the pins here. We put those there to keep it from flapping over. Again, back side of the hoop, take the fabric, and now you could, if you want to, give this a little bit of a press. Just warm up a second. And you can press this. Remember, I'm not pressing down. I'm just simply sliding on top of it to give it a press to make it nice and crisp. There we go. It's starting to heat up. But again, you don't want to be pushing down, because if you're pushing down, then you're going to be dealing with dislodging the stabilizer potentially. All right. So now I'm going to get some more tape, and I'm going to tape it down. I'm pulling it because I don't want bulk and it being caught up in the zipper, right? Because this is behind the zipper right here. Just something like that. Make sure it's covering all the stitching on all the areas, the sides of the stitching and stuff. So you want to make sure that you've got it covered so that it's not going to not get caught in the stitching, because this is the lining of the bag, right? So we want to make sure we've got it all nice. All right, so we have that all taped down. Now I'm going to return the hoop to the machine. And we're going to stitch the tack down for piece F. Right. Again, I'm looking underneath to make sure that it's okay. Now this has all been tacked down, the whole pocket in the front and everything, so you probably, don't have to watch it too much. This is just tacking down piece F, the lining part. Next thing to stitch is going to be this decorative stitching at the top of the zipper here. Once that finishes stitching, we will then place the two pieces above Now we have to remove the zipper from the machine because we are placing it on the back of the hoop. All right, so we now take piece J. This is piece J, the lining. We're going to take it and place it right side down, and this to the left, matched up to the left of the zipper placement line. This one we do tape down. I do tape this down because it is on the back of the hoop. And it's hard to get any kind of pins in this section, this area. So I do like to tape this one down. And the good thing about the transport tape is you can see at times I'm reusing the pieces over and over because it does allow me to do that. So this is medical tape. It's great. All right. So that's piece J right there on the back side. I'm actually going to put a piece right here. Just, you see how squirrely it is. It just moves a lot. All right, on the other side, I'm going to take piece K. And again, we are dealing with the nap, right? So this is above the zipper, and we want our nap to go this way. And I can feel it going this way, so now I'm going to take it and I'm going to flip it over. And it's going to be lined up against the right side of the zipper. All right. And take this down quick. Because even though it's only on the embroidery machine, a lot of times it can get rocking and rolling and shift while we're stitching it. Oops. Sorry about that. All right, back on the machine. Stiletto is ready. And start stitching. I always like to make sure that the lining is exactly where it's supposed to be by looking under the hoop before I start stitching. Didn't remember that time, but I caught it soon enough. All right. The next is piece L, and this is the foam for top part of the bag. All right. Next piece is out. And again, we're doing the same exact thing we did before. So we're going to make sure we cover all the stitching around here, and also the raw edges, or the edges here of the black chair. All right. Started. This is going to stitch around twice because it's so lofty that you need to be able to make sure it has a nice secure stitch for when you go and try to trim it later in the next step. So we are going to trim this next, and then we're going to fold the lining and the top parts. Then we'll be ready to stitch. Now we'll start moving a bit faster. Thank you all for hanging in there with me. I know this is a little bit of a long demo, but it's a lot to cover. So again, pulling up on the foam, just holding it out of the way so I can trim easily, but not pulling it so hard that I'm moving the stabilizer. Again, with these edges, we remember to watch this. And because it's stitched so close to the edge here, that's kind of negligible to me, so I'm not even going to worry about it. Trimming that. All right, so on the back side of the hoop, we are going to take piece J, and we are going to fold it. This is a by Annie stiletto, and we use it for so many things in Shannonland, Cuddle Land. I love it. I can't live without it now that I've used it. All right, so now we're going to take piece L, and we're going to fold that and give it a little press just to help it stay a little bit nicely flat. Again, a nice good tape on it and pull it. Because it's satin, it likes to curl up on itself and doesn't want to stay very well, so I like to tape it. Really pull it. All right. Now on the front, I'm going to take piece K. Put that down too. Tape that down. All right. And now the next thing that's going to stitch is the tack down for both of these pieces. Oops. Sorry about that. I was on the mat. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry about that, Jana. So what I did is on the back side of the hoop, I folded piece L over so that it is now right side up, and gave it a press right here and taped it down. And then on the front here, I took piece K and I folded it and taped it. So now we're going to return to the machine, and we are going to stitch down those two pieces. Again, making sure underneath the bottom of the hoop that everything is not folded. It is where it needs to be. And start stitching. So now you see the machine do this little like jut out spot, right here. That is going to be the placement for the flap. So it's stitched the tack down for both the front and the back upper parts, the front and the lining. Now it's doing the decorative stitching. Once that's done, we will then take the flap and we will put the flap onto the bag and tack that down. How many of you have never stitched a bag on your embroidery machine before like this and are excited to try it? I'd love to know how many people are new to this. Okay, so now that we've done that, attach the flap. So this is why it mattered where we placed this when we stitched the pocket down. So now I have my magnet here and I attach the magnets. This here, show you real quick. The machine stitched these little jut out parts. See that? Those little lines right there? That's to show you where to place, a good guideline where to place the flap between. So the ends of the flap, the sides of the flap, in between those spots is a good place to be able to know that you have it correctly placed. And so now you see here, this is the line that's stitched. I have these two pieces much longer than I need to be, and that's exactly what I want, because I want to make sure those are going to be caught in the stitching. Both the front and the back of the flap are going to be caught in the stitching. All right, so now I'm just going to tape the sides down and of course sit with it and watch it. So you can feel too the stitching line here. You want to make sure that it's kind of even above where that line is that's already stitched underneath there, to make sure that the flap is going on straight and it's not going to be crooked. All right, back to the machine. So now this is an area you also need to watch where the presser foot is and where the edge of the flap is. When I digitized it, I did create it so that the presser foot will go down, hopefully on top of where the flap is. However, if there's some issue with the way the flap was actually assembled, or there could be several reasons that it's not sitting where it needs to sit. So you just need to be aware and watch your presser foot to make sure it's not getting caught underneath the part of the flap. All right, back to the mat now. So now we're going to attach the pieces for the hardware. If you are making this a clutch and you do not want to have a strap on it, you would omit this. You would just not do this part, okay? But we're going to do it because this is our elegant bag. So You may not be able to see these lines, but there are 2 more lines that stitched here, but you can feel them. So I can see right here, this is my line here. You want to make sure that these tabs, the hardware is going to be closest to me towards the flap, and the raw edges of this tab here are going to be towards the raw edges. Okay, so that's how you know. Now I can see this is the line here, so I'm going to take this one, and this left side is going to be bumped up against the left side, sorry, the right side of this line. So here's the line, put the stiletto there. There's the line right there. I'm going to make sure the left edge is bumped up against there, just like that. This you're going to want to have tape for. Now, the way this is digitized, it's going to stitch from the center out. So that's okay. That's what you want. It's going to stitch from the center out. So you should not have a problem with the presser foot getting caught, because it's not going to come from this side trying to get over there and go to that side. So it was specifically digitized to go from the center out, and hopefully that will keep it where it needs to be, so that you will not be fighting with your presser foot. Now again, here, I can see here, this is my line, and the right edge of this one is going to be on that line. So now I kind of put the raw edges up against this line here of fabric. That's assuming that you went ahead and laid it down evenly. So you want to just eyeball it, make sure that the bottom of this one here is even with the bottom of this one, so that it's even when you when your bag is all complete. All right. So now this is where we want to make sure, if you have not slowed your machine down, with every machine you can go ahead and adjust the speed on it. So if you cannot raise your presser feet at this time, what you might want to do, hang on. See how the presser foot is in the middle here? That's where it's supposed to be. It was digitized specifically like that, so that when you go ahead and start stitching, it is stitching in the middle of this. It's not trying to jump over and get on this. Machine embroidery speed all the way to the slowest. And now I've got my stiletto in hand. And I'm going to let it go slow. And I've got my tape there. And now it's going to go straight across. So now, if this part makes you worried, when you get approaching it, stop your machine right there. And when I start it again and lift the presser foot up, push this part under, stop it. Can you see how it jumped? Nope. Up. I'm going to make sure it's underneath the presser foot. Drop the presser foot caught it this time, and now I'm going to press start. Sure, I don't think that's that stitch. I think so. Yeah, we did. Okay, so you do want to make sure that when you're doing that point that or when you put the hardware pieces down, that you have indeed made them so that they are far enough away from that stitched line that was there before. So there was the stitched line that we had here, and when you place them down, you want to make sure that this metal is not close to this stitched line right here. It's far enough away. So now I am going to leave the tape on this part here, just to hold it down. All right. I don't need the tape on the ends because it's already tacked down. It's already secured. All right, so now let me get it a little bit out of the way. Just the hardware just needs to be so that it is secured on there. All right, now next thing to do is we take other pieces and put them on here. However, I'm going to remove the tape finally from the piece of the zipper. And I'm going to open the zipper about good halfway, 3/4. And then I'm going to attach the magnet again. On the back side of the hoop, I am going to cut away the stabilizer from behind the zipper. So I take a little itty bitty snip, and I'm making sure I'm only cutting through the stabilizer. This is not a time to rush. This is a time to be cautious and take it slow, because you do not want to cut the edges of the zipper. So I get it started with those small scissors, and then I take my applique scissors, but because they're curved, I have less of a chance, a likelihood of getting into and cutting the zipper. So I just glide it as I pull up on the stabilizer, and I go from side to side. And you can see here, I'm simply trimming the stabilizer, and it's just trimming right through the stabilizer, just gliding right through it. I get to a point where I feel a little bit of resistance, and then I'll switch to the other side. Now, when I get to this stitching right here, I'll just trim it right like that. This is a very important step, not to forget. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take piece N. We're going to place it right side down. But again, we want to make sure we got our nap going the way we want it to go. And the way I put all my little spools on there, I put it at the bottom left corner so I knew which direction that the nap was going. So I'm going to turn it over just like that. And then I'm going to take piece O, which is the foam. So piece N is covering all the stitching. All right. These pieces are cut large on purpose because there is a lot to go around right now. So don't skimp on these pieces unless you're experienced, because they are cut larger than the other pieces of the bag, specifically on purpose. All right, so now we have these pieces, N, right side down, O on top of N. We're going to get another piece that's good here. Again, this is really when you need to make sure your presser foot is raised, your machine is slowed down, because this is a lot to get through. All right. After this stitches down, we have one more piece to stitch down, and then we're going to trim it up. So I thank you for your patience and for sticking with me here. I know it's been a while, but wanted to make sure you guys got all the information you needed. All right, so now we're going to stitch this. Going slow. You can see I have my presser foot raised up as high as it will go, and it still is sitting right on top of the foam. So we have two pieces of foam right now. We have 4 pieces of the Luxe Cuddle caught on that. You can see sort of dragging the just remove it. 4 pieces of the Luxe Cuddle Willow. 2 pieces of I hit the what do you call that? Hang on. It's not wanting to raise. I may need to restart the machine. Yep, this has never happened before. There we go. Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to restart the machine because it probably threw the registration off for the arm. Turn this off a second. Talks amongst yourself, coffees, dwarfs, daughters. And I'm going to restart the machine really quickly so that I make sure that if the registration was thrown off, that it is not going to cause a problem on the rest of the design. Make sure that the crescent foot is tighten down all the way. Yes, I'm using a 90-14 needle. And I'm doing that because there are so many layers to get through, as you can see. I don't typically use 90-14, but when I'm going through lots and lots of layers like this, I want to make sure that it can get through. So I don't know what that was all about, why that did that, because that hasn't happened before. But, you know, just so you know, it happens to the best of us. It happens to all of us. All right, skipping ahead. Let's see. All right, back on the machine. Trying to skip ahead in the design so that I don't have to stitch all that again. All right. See what's going on here. Skip. All right. Back to our regularly scheduled program. Now, of course, we're tacking down all these extra pieces and layers and parts and zippers and tabs, and sometimes the foam will kind of start dragging on itself like that. Just stop, lift up the presser foot, get it under there again, and continue. Okay, and now for the last piece that we're going to put on. to the mat, because this is now going to be on the underside of the hoop. Ready? So, or the back of the hoop. Underside, back. Right, so turn the hoop over. We've got the satin, so we want to make sure that we have it in the correct way. Right side down. That's the way I'm doing this. I need to get new tape. This is about seen better days. So this is good to just tape on the corners. Get the 4 corners to tape down. And again, you want to make sure that you're covering all the stitching. I promise this is the last piece. And I'll tape it in the centers here to make sure. All right, back to the machine. And again, now this is going through all those layers, all the foam, all the satin, all the luxe cuddle, all the quilting cotton. So there's a lot going on right now, a lot happening, a lot of layers we're stitching through. That's why we want to go slow, stop the machine when we need to. This is stitching a little bit inside of where the last step on purpose. You don't want to see all that extra stitching poking out on the sides. You know, the amazing thing is, though, when it was stopped earlier, it didn't break the needle. It just caught up on the presser foot for whatever reason. And next, after this, we will trim it all up, turn it right side out, and it will be ready to go. What embroidery machines do you all have? And what do you love about them? I would love to know in the comments. What's your largest hoop size? We've got a Baby Lock Solaris. Got Janome. What else? Maybe Santa can bring some wonderful new machines. All right. Next up, we will trim this all up. Turn it right side out. It's really tempting at this point to speed the machine up because you're so close to being at the end, but you want to make sure you still. Okay, let's get stuck again. For some reason, it does not like this look. Yes. It is becoming a pillow. So should you, Barbara asked, should you always restart your machine when this happens? Well, it just depends. I mean, if you break a needle, you know, you might be okay just to replace the needle. Because my presser foot started, it kind of moved out of alignment and I could see that. I was leery of continuing on without restarting it. Reason being, it could throw off what's called the registration of your arm. The arm is what your hoop attaches to over on the side of the machine. So if you are doing something and you're in the middle of a design and you're something like that happens, like happened to me, it's best to restart the machine and reload the design. So when my machine restarted, it started up, it moved the embroidery hoop arm, and then it said, would you like to pick up where you left off? I said no. I did not want to pick up where I left off because the machine remembered where I was and it remembered what it was doing. So if the registration was thrown off on the hoop and on the arm, if I said, yes, let's continue, it would not have reset the design and reset the arm. It would have just picked right up, right back to where we were from right before I restarted it. And if the registration in the arm was thrown off, then it would have just started exactly where it was and could have been all out of alignment. So when you have something like that happen, restart your machine. And if your machine remembers the design you were stitching and what step you were on, and it says, would you like to restart it? Would you like to, continue? Say no or click cancel. Don't restart it. Reload the design, go back into your embroidery side of your machine. If you have it on the USB or if it's loaded to your machine, and then choose it and then skip forward on the steps like you saw me doing. Now, there is one more step to this design. Do not stitch the last step. The last step is there on purpose to take the machine to this side of the hoop. The design is finished stitching, but there is one more step to stitch that it says it has to stitch. We are not going to stitch that. The reason being, some machines, when they finish, they will go to the center of the design, and sometimes they do a needle down and a needle up. If you are using something else besides Cuddle, you're going to put a hole in the center of your bag. If you're doing this design here, and we have that magnet that's right here, almost in the center of the design, you're going to put your needle in your presser foot. Try to go through that, okay? So do not stitch that last step. All right, let's get to cleaning up. So one of the things I love to do right now is trim away the foam, and I like to do it while it's in the hoop like this because it allows me to have something to pull against. So I have something to pull against and help me trim it as close as I can to the stitching. So this outer stitching is not the stitching that's holding the bag together. So if I trim it a little bit, it's not too much of a worry. I do, however, not want to go through the stitching that is inside of that because that is the exterior of the bag. All right. So sometimes it gets a little bit because there's so many layers here that it's trying to get around. So around the entire perimeter of the foam helps it get all the bulk out of it. So now I like to turn it over to the back side, remove as much of the tape as possible to get this away from the stabilizer. And last piece. All right, now we're going to pop it out of the hoop. So on the back side here, you can see this last piece we stitched. My hand is going in there. That's not stitched closed. All right, so we want to make sure that we leave these two pieces of the lining, the two black pieces of lining, we leave those edges long. You can cut them down to about 1 inch if you want. I like to leave them as long as they are So I am not worried about putting them inside. Those are what's going to go inside the bag to close it up. So first thing I do is I turn it to the back side and I trim in on an angle like that. That way I know I'm not going to touch this area. Everything else now you can trim to your heart's content. I usually, when I trim, I take my scissors at an angle and I cut at an angle. So I'm not cutting straight. I do this on purpose to try to get rid of some of the bulk. If I cut straight across, everything is going to be even and it's going to create a lot of lumps in there. So I like to cut it all at an angle. And I'm about 1/4 of an inch away. Now, I don't like to cut the ends of my zipper. So here on the sides, I will go piece by piece. I like to leave the zipper a little bit longer because it does have excess there. And I like to have that excess because that is a part of the bag that's going to have extra stress and strain put on it. So I go ahead and I trim around the zipper and I leave that zipper long. Now again, I'm just going to take the stabilizer in the lining and I'm going to trim close to those. Sometimes it helps to do it in layers like this so that you're not trying to cut all of this at the same time in one step because it's a lot to get through, right? It's a lot. Now I'm doing the black cherry. So you have on this other side here, this is the willow. So I also like to leave some of the tabs longer as well, because those are also another stress point. So if you trim them down to like 1/4 of an inch from the rest of the bag, that's not going to give a lot left in that seam. So I like to leave those a little bit longer as well. So I leave the tabs for the hardware and the zippers a little bit longer. And of course, cut across a diagonal. Stabilizer. So I do a lot of back and forth, front to back, seeing where I am, cutting the different areas. So what I'm cutting is I'm cutting all the stabilizer, all of the cuddle, and the lining only on the parts where it's stitched down. And you can only see that from the back side, back here. This part is not stitched, so I'm not even going to cut that. But you can, I'm folding that lining and I am trimming the stabilizer. This part I can trim because that's stitched down. I can cut all the black cherry, cut in on an angle. All right. And I can also cut this black cherry as well. All right. I am going to get my vacuum really quickly and I'm going to clean this up for a second so you guys can actually see what I am doing for the next few steps. So mute myself for a second. And this is one of the things that is great to have when you are doing anything with Cuddle. It's a hand vacuum. All right, can you hear me? All right, so this is the part that's not stitched. And I'm going to reach in here and I'm going to poke through and and I'm going to get all this turned right side out. Actually, I'm turning the lining out. Yes, Deborah, that is having a handheld vac like that. I do that every single time I cut, I vacuum. I cut, I vacuum. I cut, I vacuum. And that way it just cuts down on so much of the cuddle dust and so much of the excess fluff and stuff as well. So I like that. It helps me to just see things too, where everything is. All right, so now I'm going to get my point and turner and I'm going to put it into the corners to poke those out. Helps get a nice crisp corner there. Also helps sometimes to just get your finger inside there. And so now this is where you would close this up, okay? So you have these two pieces of lining. You would fold them over like this. And you would seal it however you want. If you want to use like a Steam-A-Seam 2 that will close that up, you can do that, or you can hand stitch it. But that's how you would close that up. And so now in the interest of time, I'm just going to turn it all right side out. I'm using my fingers to get into the corners to really push those out, along with the point turner really helps. And there we go. We just completed the Skylar Sling Bag all in the hoop on our embroidery machine. So now is the time we get to pick some winners. So if you're wondering and you didn't join us, you can purchase this design file on my website, Creative Appliques. Also, I wanted to mention that coming up in November 25th, it's Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, I will be back here again doing another bag. We will be doing the Haley zipper bag. It's not this in-depth or intense. It's a little bit more simplified, but I will be doing that bag. And again, we're going to up level that bag. That bag, it's really cute. It's really fun. It's just a clutch, but we're going to really up level it again for use for the holidays with some Shannon Cuddle. So that's November 25th. I'll be back here again. So we are going to pick some winners now. And we have 3 giveaway winners. We have Jessica McGrath, we have Cindy Clark, and Joyce Brown. Congratulations, ladies. Please email us at info@shannonfabrics.com with your name, your shipping info, and phone number. And in the subject line, please put live winner. That way we will know. And you will receive your 2 yards of Cuddle and also be able to get this Skylar Sling Bag for free as well. And one more thing, next week, the Cuddle Showcase Live will be on Thursday, November 6th. Remember, we're usually here for Sew Together Tuesday Live. Next week, because of Election Day, it will be on Thursday. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed being here with you all. And until next Thursday and next time I see you, make your life cuddly. Bye for now.